October 12th, 1993. That date is burned into my memory in a way birthdays and anniversaries never were. I can close my eyes right now and feel the steering wheel under my palms. Still slick with the sweat, I didn't realize I was sweating. The road to Ashen Ridge was supposed to be a shortcut. At least that's what the county map said. Gravel popped under the tires as I drove uphill, each crack echoing louder than it should have inside the cab. The forest pressed close on both sides, tall pines and skeletal birch, their shadows dragging across the windshield like slow fingers. The girls were loud in the back seat. 5 voices layered over each other. Laughter, arguing, excitement. The normal chaos of a family moving into a new home. But their noise felt distant, like I was hearing it from another room. My attention kept drifting to the trees. There was movement in the gaps between trunks, not actual shapes, not anything I could point to, just the persistent sensation that something was stepping out of view each time I looked directly at it. I told myself it was nerves. New house, new county, new start. That's all. Then the house appeared. Even now, I remember the exact second it came into view. 12:47 p.m. I checked the dashboard clock. Sight of it hit me like deja vu, so sharp it made my chest tighten. The farmhouse sat on the hill like it had been standing there longer than the road that led to it. White paint peeled down to gray boards. The porch sagged slightly in the center. The windows reflected the sky unevenly, some bright, others dull, like they were holding on to shadow. The engine died. The silence followed instantly. No birds, no insects, no wind. Just absence. The girls burst out of the truck, their footsteps tearing through the quiet. I turned to get Bramble. He wouldn't move. He sat rigid in the back seat, ears flattened, eyes locked on the house. His entire body trembled with a vibration I could feel through the leash. When I tugged gently, he growled, low, terrified, not at me, but at the open air between us and the porch. I'd never heard that sound from him before. It wasn't aggression, it was warning. I tried again. He snapped at the air and jerked backward hard enough to choke himself on the collar. His eyes were wild, the whites showing. He wasn't being stubborn. He was trying to survive something I couldn't see. I unclipped the leash. He bolted into the trees without hesitation. The woods swallowed him completely. No crashing brush, no retreating footsteps. Just gone. I stood there longer than I meant to, staring into the tree line, waiting for movement. Nothing came back. The house felt heavier after that. Inside, the air smelled like wet wood and something faintly sweet, old, stale sweetness that settled at the back of my throat. Every step across the floor produced a slow groan, deep and resonant, like the boards were objecting to our weight. The girls ran upstairs. Their laughter echoed strangely in the hallway, bending and stretching in a way sound shouldn't. I followed. Halfway up the staircase, the temperature dropped. Not suddenly, gradually, like stepping deeper into shade. My skin prickled. At the top, the hallway looked wrong, longer than it should have been. The far wall seemed to retreat the longer I stared at it. Then I heard it. A clap. Sharp. Close. It snapped through the air like a breaking branch. I froze. The sound echoed once, twice, and died. I told myself it was the girls playing. Children clap. Old houses carry sound. Another clap came. This one had rhythm, measured, intentional. It came from the end of the hallway. I walked toward it, each step heavier than the last. The air thickened slightly, pressing against my ears. I could hear my heartbeat. The storage room door stood ajar. Dust hung motionless inside. In the center of the floor sat a section of boards nailed down in a rough square. A hatch. I stared at it. Another clap answered. Muted. From below. My skin tightened. I knelt and ran my fingers across the boards. The wood was cold, not cool, cold like it had never seen sunlight. I pried loose a nail. The hatch opened reluctantly. Cold air rushed out, sharp enough to sting my eyes. I struck a match. The flame bent sideways like something was breathing on it. Stone steps descended into darkness that didn't behave like darkness. It wasn't empty. It felt full. I stepped down. The temperature dropped hard. My breath fogged. Dirt walls closed in on either side. Wooden supports rose from the ground, carved with deep overlapping scratches. Not tool marks, not animal marks. Desperate marks, layered, repeated. The match burned low. The darkness pressed closer. I climbed back up without thinking. The hatch closed with a dull thud. The air upstairs felt warmer, but not safer. Just occupied. Night settled over Ashen Ridge slowly. The house never relaxed. Boards flexed. Something thudded faintly inside the walls. Soft shifts of weight traveled through the floor like footsteps paced out of sight. At 2:11 a.m., I heard Bramble bark. Relief hit so hard it hurt. The bark rose into a howl, then cut off mid-sound. Silence crashed down. I went outside. The air was thick and unmoving. My flashlight beam shook across the grass until it found him near the tree line. Bramble lay still. Cold. No blood. No wound. Nothing to explain the emptiness in his eyes. It felt like something had simply decided he should stop. Behind me, a clap, close enough that I felt the air move. I turned. The house stood dark on the hill, windows reflecting nothing. Watching. Morning arrived gray and thin. The sunlight didn't warm anything. I buried Bramble at 7:32 a.m. When I came back inside, the sweet smell had returned, stronger. Upstairs, a sudden thud shook the ceiling. Then another. I ran. Rowan sat rigid on her bed. Her head slammed backward into the wardrobe. Once. Twice. Again. The sound echoed sickeningly. I grabbed her shoulders. Her eyes opened. Black. Not shadowed. Black like depth. My breath caught. Then they cleared. The wardrobe door creaked open behind her. Darkness filled it. Thicker than shadow. Heavier than the room allowed. Something shifted inside. Not stepping forward. Just becoming aware. I slammed the door shut. The house shuddered. From somewhere below, a clap. Then another. Then many. Slow applause rolling through the structure like thunder trapped in wood. I stood there, holding the wardrobe closed, listening to the house celebrate. And I understood something with absolute certainty. We hadn't disturbed this place. We had completed it. And whatever lived inside Ashen Ridge was glad we were finally home. The clapping continued long after I stopped counting. October 13th, 1993, 6:08 a.m. I didn't sleep. I'm not saying I slept badly. I mean, I did not lose consciousness once. I lay on the living room floor with my back against the couch, watching the staircase like a guard dog that knew it was outmatched. The house breathed all night. That's the closest word I have for it. Every few minutes, the structure expanded and contracted with a slow wooden sigh. Boards flexed. Walls ticked softly. It wasn't random settling. There was rhythm to it. Inhale. Exhale. Like something enormous sleeping beneath the floor. The girls eventually drifted off in a pile of blankets beside Mara. I envied them. Children have a survival instinct that includes selective denial. If their bodies shut down, their minds follow. Mine didn't. At 3:07 a.m., I remember the time because I checked. Every sound stopped, not faded. Stopped. The house didn't creak. The air didn't move. Even my breathing felt muffled. Silence pressed in so hard my ears rang. Then, clap. It came from upstairs. Soft. Deliberate. Not loud enough to wake anyone else. Just for me. I stayed where I was. I didn't look. I didn't acknowledge it. Because instinct told me that sound wasn't meant to be answered. It waited. Another clap. Closer. The staircase creaked once, a single step bearing weight. I stared at the darkness above the railing and felt something looking back. The sensation wasn't visual. It was pressure behind my eyes. Awareness touching awareness. I kept breathing slowly, pretending sleep. Eventually, the presence receded. The house exhaled. The sounds returned. I did not sleep after that. 7:42 a.m. I made the decision to leave while the girls were eating cereal out of plastic bowls on the living room floor. No announcement. No discussion. Just action. The truck sat where I'd left it, dew clinging to the windshield. The morning air felt normal, cool, damp, alive with distant bird calls. For a moment, I wondered if the night had been hysteria amplified by unfamiliar surroundings. Then I opened the driver's door. The interior smelled faintly sweet, the same smell as the house, rotting flowers. I climbed in anyway and turned the key. Click. Nothing. I tried again. Click. The dashboard flickered weakly and died. Dead battery. I sat there staring at the steering wheel, listening to my pulse in my ears. That's when the pressure started. It wasn't physical at first. More like gravity had subtly increased. My chest felt heavy. The air thickened. A thought surfaced that didn't feel like mine. Don't leave. It wasn't a voice. It was intent. Clear and complete. My hands tightened on the wheel. I stepped out of the truck. The pressure intensified immediately. The woods beyond the property line looked wrong. The colors felt muted, like a photograph losing saturation. The trees leaned inward slightly. I took 3 steps away from the porch. My ears popped. The world narrowed. My lungs refused a full breath. Panic climbed my spine. Every instinct screamed the same message. Turn back. I forced one more step. Pain bloomed behind my eyes, sharp, electrical. My vision pulsed, and then I understood. This wasn't fear, this was resistance, like walking into deep water with a current pushing you toward shore. I turned. The relief was instant. The pressure vanished. Air filled my lungs. The woods snapped back into focus. The porch looked welcoming. That realization chilled me more than anything from the night before. The house wasn't trapping me, it was persuading me. And persuasion is harder to fight than force. 9:15 a.m., I tested the boundary again. Same result. 3 steps off the porch, and the pressure built until my body refused to cooperate. It wasn't imagination. It was measurable. My pulse spiked. My vision tunneled. My hands trembled like I was standing too close to high voltage. The property had an edge, and I could feel it. By 10:02 a.m., I stopped trying. The house seemed calmer after that. Not quiet, never quiet, but satisfied. The boards creaked softly. Pipes ticked. Somewhere deep below, something shifted like weight adjusting in sleep. Approval. That's what it felt like. Approval that I'd stopped resisting. The smell returned. Sweet decay drifting through the hallway upstairs. I followed it despite knowing better. The air grew colder with each step. My breath fogged faintly by the time I reached Rowan's room. The wardrobe door stood open. I knew I'd closed it. The darkness inside looked thicker than the room allowed. Light from the window stopped at its edge like it hit a wall. The smell poured from it. Rotting flowers, wet earth. Something ancient and patient. I stood there listening. The house held its breath with me, then movement. Not forward, not outward. The darkness inside shifted like a surface disturbed by a ripple, and I felt a tension. Focused, curious, studying. My heartbeat pounded in my throat. The sensation wasn't hostile. That made it worse. It felt like something examining an object it intended to keep. I closed the wardrobe slowly. The latch clicked. The temperature in the room rose immediately. The house exhaled. From below, clap, soft, satisfied. 1:03 p.m. The girls were playing in the living room when the clock stopped. All of them. The kitchen clock, my wristwatch, the cheap plastic wall clock above the doorway. The ticking vanished mid-beat. The silence felt surgical. The girls didn't notice. I did. From beneath the floor, a thud, heavy, followed by another. Measured, like footsteps pacing in dirt. The hatch upstairs creaked faintly, boards flexed. Nails groaned. The house wasn't hiding the sound anymore. It wanted me to hear, to understand scale. Whatever lived below wasn't confined to the basement. The basement was just where it touched our world. The footsteps stopped. Silence returned. Then, clap. Close enough to vibrate in my chest. The clocks resumed ticking in perfect unison. The girls kept playing. Nothing had changed for them. Everything had changed for me, because I realized something sitting there, listening to that synchronized ticking. The house wasn't reacting randomly. It was communicating, rewarding compliance, correcting resistance, teaching me the rules, and I had the sinking certainty that the lesson had only just begun. That night was coming, and the house expected me to stay awake for it. By afternoon, the house felt settled. Not quiet, that word doesn't belong anywhere near Ashen Ridge, but stable in the way a predator becomes still once it knows prey isn't running anymore. I felt it in my chest. The pressure from earlier had faded. The air inside the house no longer resisted me. My movements felt permitted. Every step I took across the floor produced familiar groans instead of the strained protests from the night before. Approval again. I hated that I recognized the sensation. The girls played in the living room. Their laughter sounded normal, not warped, not swallowed. Mara sat near them pretending to read, but I could see her eyes flicking toward the staircase every few seconds. We weren't talking about leaving. Not because we agreed, because the idea itself felt distant, unreal, like remembering a dream after waking. That scared me more than the clapping ever had. The house wasn't just trapping us physically, it was adjusting how we thought. I needed something solid, something outside this place. Proof that what was happening wasn't confined to my head. The filing cabinet in the dining room caught my attention. It was built into the wall, an old wooden thing with warped drawers and tarnished brass handles. I hadn't opened it when we moved in. It felt like part of the house, and I'd instinctively avoided interacting with anything that seemed original. Now it felt necessary. The drawer resisted at first, wood scraping wood. When it opened, a puff of stale air escaped, carrying the smell of paper and damp earth. Inside were documents, old ones, deeds, tax receipts, letters bound with twine brittle enough to crumble at a touch. The top sheet was dated 1891. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted it. The ink had faded to brown, but the handwriting was sharp and deliberate. It described a land transfer, the property granted to a family named Harrow. The name snagged in my memory like a hook. I didn't know why it felt familiar, but my pulse picked up anyway. Beneath that were handwritten notes, not official records, just loose pages, personal accounts, observations. The writing changed from document to document, different hands across different decades. The theme did not change. Children refusing to sleep upstairs, footsteps beneath the floor at night, clapping heard from empty rooms. The words felt heavy in my hands. One entry dated October 3rd, 1902, caught my eye. The sound comes when we speak of leaving. It is patient otherwise. The land does not enjoy abandonment. My mouth went dry. Another entry, written in a shaky scrawl: we buried the dog this morning. No marks, just empty. I closed my eyes. The room felt colder. Not dramatically, just enough that my breath slowed. The house was listening. I became aware of the silence around me. The girls' laughter had faded without me noticing. The air felt thick again, like before a storm. I didn't look toward the staircase. I didn't want to confirm what I felt. I read one more entry, undated. The handwriting was frantic, ink pressed so hard it bled through the page. It studies the mother first. It learns the shape of love. That is how it enters. My fingers tightened on the paper. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked, slow, measured. I replaced the documents carefully, sliding the drawer shut with deliberate gentleness. The house exhaled. The girls' laughter returned as if someone had unmuted the world. I stood there trying to steady my breathing. It wasn't random haunting. It was a process, a cycle practiced long enough to become routine, and we were inside it. That evening, the boundary changed. I felt it before I tested it. The air near the front door carried a subtle weight, like standing near deep water. The porch beyond the glass looked distant, not physically farther away, just harder to imagine stepping onto. I opened the door anyway. The pressure hit instantly, not pain this time. Resistance, like pushing against thick rubber. My foot crossed the threshold. The world dimmed slightly, colors losing brightness, sound dulled, my heartbeat echoed in my ears. I stepped back inside. Relief washed over me so fast my knees nearly buckled. The house hummed faintly, a vibration I felt through the soles of my feet. Approval again. I shut the door. My hands were shaking. The boundary wasn't static. It was adapting, learning how much force was necessary to keep me compliant. Night came heavy. The house felt alert. Every creak sounded intentional. Every shift in the walls felt like repositioning. The air smelled faintly sweet again, not overpowering, just present enough to remind me of the wardrobe upstairs. We stayed in the living room, lights on. No one suggested sleep. The girls grew quiet one by one, curling against Mara. Their breathing deepened. The room filled with soft, fragile warmth that felt out of place inside those walls. I sat facing the staircase, waiting. The clock ticked steadily. Each second stretched longer than the last. At 3:07 a.m., the ticking stopped. The silence hit like a physical force. The air thickened. My ears rang. From upstairs, a clap, slow, deliberate. Another answered from the hallway, then one from inside the walls. The sounds surrounded the room in a patient rhythm, applause without joy, recognition. I felt the house's attention settle on me, not hostile, expectant, like a teacher waiting to see if I'd learned. I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe louder than necessary. The clapping continued for a long time, not escalating, not fading, just present, a reminder: you are here, you are staying, you are understood. Eventually the sound stopped. The clock resumed ticking mid-beat. The house exhaled. But I didn't relax, because I understood something sitting there in the returning quiet. The house wasn't trying to scare us away. It was conditioning us to remain. And the longer we stayed, the more fluent it became in the language of fear. I knew the house had chosen someone before I knew who. It wasn't a sound or movement that tipped me off. It was the feeling in the air when I woke. A tightness that hadn't been there before. The atmosphere inside the living room felt stretched thin, like something had been pulled across it overnight. The girls were still asleep against Mara. Mara wasn't. She was sitting upright, staring at the staircase. Her eyes didn't move when I shifted. They didn't blink. She looked like someone listening to a voice I couldn't hear. I said her name quietly. She flinched, hard, like I'd grabbed her shoulder. Her gaze snapped to me, and for a split second, confusion crossed her face. Then embarrassment. I couldn't sleep, she said. Her voice sounded normal, but her hands were clenched so tightly her knuckles were pale. You hear something? I asked. She hesitated, then shook her head too fast. No, just house noises. The air around us tightened again. A floorboard creaked upstairs. Mara's eyes flicked toward the ceiling before she caught herself. That was when I understood. Not in words, in instinct. The house wasn't speaking to all of us. It was speaking to her, and it didn't want me involved. The realization carried a quiet animal fear. Not loud panic, something deeper. Territorial, protective. I moved closer to her. The temperature dropped slightly. Not enough to fog breath, just enough that the hair on my arms lifted. Mara shifted away without realizing she'd done it. Her eyes widened immediately after. Confusion again. I don't know why I did that, she said. But I did. The house was testing boundaries, not physical ones, relational ones, seeing what it could separate. The day felt wrong. Not dramatic, not chaotic, just subtly misaligned. The girls stayed quieter than usual. They played close to Mara, glancing toward the staircase every few minutes like animals aware of a storm humans couldn't smell yet. Mara grew distant. Not cold. Distracted. She kept pausing mid-task, head tilted slightly, listening. Once, I caught her standing in the hallway facing the stairs without remembering how she got there. I thought I heard Rowan, she said when she noticed me. Rowan was in the living room. Mara frowned. I must have imagined it. But her voice lacked conviction. The house creaked softly, a low, satisfied sound. Afternoon brought the first direct proof. I found Mara standing at the bottom of the staircase with her hand resting on the banister. She wasn't climbing, just touching, like someone greeting an old friend. Mara, I said. No response. I stepped closer. The air thickened. The sweet, decaying smell drifted down from above. Her fingers tightened on the railing. Her lips moved. At first, I thought she was whispering. Then I realized she was mouthing words silently, repeating something. Her expression was calm, too calm. Mara, I said it louder. Her head snapped toward me, eyes unfocused. For a moment, she didn't seem to recognize where she was. Then awareness flooded back. Her hand jerked away from the banister like she'd been burned. What am I doing? She whispered. The house creaked above us, a slow, patient sound, answering. I took her hand. It was ice cold. We stepped away together. The pressure in the hallway eased immediately. Mara's breathing steadied. I heard singing, she said. My stomach tightened. From upstairs? She nodded. But it wasn't loud. It felt like remembering a song you forgot years ago. She rubbed her temples, and it felt important, like I needed to hear the rest. The staircase creaked again, one step, then another, not climbing, descending, measured, deliberate. We didn't look, we didn't need to. The sound stopped halfway down, waiting. I felt the attention settle on us, not hostile, evaluating. I guided Mara back into the living room. The air warmed, the house exhaled, displeased. Night came heavier than the previous ones. The atmosphere felt charged, not violent but anticipatory, the kind of tension that exists right before a storm breaks. We stayed in the living room again. Lights on, no discussion about sleeping upstairs. The girls drifted off quickly, exhaustion overtaking fear. Mara leaned against the couch, eyes half-lidded but fighting sleep. Every time her breathing slowed, the staircase creaked, soft, inviting. Her eyelids fluttered open again. The house was persistent, patient. I sat facing the stairs, watching, waiting. At some point, Mara's head tilted slightly, the same listening posture from the morning. Her lips parted. She stood, slow, dreamlike. I was on my feet immediately. Mara. She didn't respond. Her steps toward the staircase were quiet, careful, like she didn't want to wake anyone. The air thickened around her. The sweet smell intensified. I stepped in front of her. The pressure hit me hard. Not pain, but resistance. My chest tightened. My ears rang faintly. Mara's eyes met mine. They were distant, not empty, occupied. Lucas, she whispered, her voice layered strangely, like an echo trailing the words. It's okay. The staircase creaked, encouragement. The pressure increased. My vision narrowed. The house was pushing. Not at her, at me. Testing how much force it needed to move me aside. I planted my feet. Every instinct screamed to step away, to let her pass, to comply. Instead, I grabbed her shoulders. Mara, look at me. Her gaze wavered. For a moment, I saw her. Fear, confusion. Then, the pressure snapped, like a stretched cord breaking. The air rushed back into my lungs. Mara blinked hard. Her knees buckled. I caught her. The staircase groaned loudly above us. Not creaking, groaning. A sound thick with frustration. The temperature dropped sharply. The girls stirred but didn't wake. The house held that cold silence for several seconds. Then, clap, sharp, close. Not applause, correction. The warmth returned slowly. The pressure eased. The house settled. But the message was clear. I had interrupted something, and it didn't like that. Mara didn't remember walking. She remembered the singing. She described it the same way again. Familiar, comforting, necessary, like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. She didn't want to talk about it after that. None of us slept. The house creaked softly through the night, its rhythm different now, restless, recalculating. Because it had learned something important, I would resist, which meant next time it wouldn't ask so gently. The house felt calm the next morning, not peaceful. Calm in the way a lake looks smooth right after something large slips beneath the surface. The tension from the night before was gone, but it hadn't left. It had sunk deeper. The air sat neutral in my lungs. No sweetness, no cold, just old wood and stale dust. If I didn't know better, I could have convinced myself we'd imagined everything. But the house wasn't empty. It was listening. I felt it the way you feel in standing behind you. Not a sound, not movement, just certainty. Its attention slid across the rooms as we moved through them. Not hunting, observing, learning our rhythm. The girls stayed close to Mara. They didn't wander, didn't argue, didn't do any of the noisy orbiting kids usually do in a new space. Every few minutes, one of them would glance toward the hallway, like they were checking whether something was still where they left it. Nothing ever was, and somehow that was worse. The first voice came just after midday. I was in the kitchen rinsing a glass, watching cloudy water spiral into the drain. The faucet sputtered, another reminder this house resisted being modern, and I leaned closer to hear the pipes. That's when I heard it. Lucas. My name. Behind me. My voice. Not an echo. Not distorted. Perfectly mine. The same low tone I use when I don't want to startle someone. Every muscle in my back locked. The glass nearly slipped from my fingers. For a moment, I told myself it was memory. Houses hold sound strangely. Old structures breathe. Wood carries vibration. Then it said my name again. Closer. Lucas. The tone had intent now. Familiar. Expectant. Like someone trying to get my attention gently. I turned. The kitchen doorway stood empty. The hallway beyond it stretched, still and dim, sunlight failing to reach the far end. Nothing moved, but the air felt occupied. Thick. Aware. The silence wasn't absence. It was listening for my response. I didn't give it one. I backed into the living room slowly, never taking my eyes off the hallway. The pressure eased the second I crossed the threshold, like stepping out of deep water. Mara looked up. You okay? I nodded too quickly. Didn't trust my voice, because for a second, it hadn't felt like it belonged to me anymore. The voice didn't return for hours. That was intentional. I could feel the house waiting, replaying the moment, adjusting. The afternoon passed in tight silence. Even the girls sensed the shift. Their laughter came in bursts that died too quickly, like sound itself didn't want to linger. By nightfall, the air had changed again. Not heavy. Focused. We stayed in the living room with the lights on. No one said we were afraid to sleep upstairs. The understanding didn't need language. The girls drifted into shallow sleep against Mara. I sat facing the hallway, watching shadows breathe. That's when the voice came back. Soft. From the stairs. Lucas. The sound slid into the room like a draft. My pulse spiked, but I didn't react, didn't blink, didn't even shift. The house was waiting for acknowledgement. I gave it nothing. The voice tried again. This time it was Mara. Urgent. Lucas, come here. The tone hit me in the gut. That exact pitch she uses when one of the girls is hurt. Every instinct screamed to move. But Mara was right beside me, breathing slow, asleep. The hallway waited. Then, Dad? Rowan's voice, small, scared. Close enough that my chest tightened. I could hear Rowan breathing in her sleep 3 feet away. The voice whispered again, Dad. The temperature dropped. The sweet smell crept in, faint but unmistakable. The air thickened, pressing against my ears. The house leaned in, testing. I stayed still. Seconds stretched. The silence became unbearable. Then the voice returned in my tone, right beside my ear. Lucas. Perfect. Intimate. A mirror held against my thoughts. For a fraction of a second, it felt right to answer. Natural. Like completing a sentence. I clenched my jaw, said nothing. The hallway pulsed with quiet frustration. Then, clap, sharp, close. A correction. The air warmed slowly, the smell receded, the pressure lifted, the house withdrew. Not defeated, recalculating. It had learned something important. Voices alone wouldn't move me, so it changed tactics. Later, sometime deep into the night, I woke with the certainty that someone was standing in the hallway. Not fear, recognition. My eyes opened slowly. The living room lights flickered weakly. Everyone slept, except a silhouette stood at the far end of the hall. Tall, still, facing me. The proportions were wrong, too narrow, too deliberate, like a human shape remembered imperfectly. I didn't breathe. The silhouette spoke, my voice, Lucas. No distortion, no echo, just me. Hearing it felt like falling half an inch out of alignment with my own body. The figure didn't step closer, didn't need to. The air around it thickened, vibrating with expectation. It was waiting for me to confirm it, to accept it. I stared back, unmoving, unanswering. Seconds passed. The silhouette twitched, a subtle glitch in its outline. Then it vanished, no fade, no retreat, just gone. The hallway returned to wood and shadow. The pressure evaporated, but the message remained, carved into the quiet. The house wasn't trying to scare me. It was trying to understand what I sounded like, what I felt like. And if I ever answered the wrong voice, I wasn't sure I'd be the one answering next time. I didn't sleep after that. I watched the hallway until dawn, feeling the house shift around us in small, thoughtful creaks. It wasn't restless anymore. It was satisfied. An experiment completed. Results recorded. And somewhere inside those old walls, something now knew exactly how to say my name. I didn't tell Mara about the silhouette, not right away. There's a difference between sharing information and spreading fear, and at that point, fear was already doing enough work on its own. The girls were fraying around the edges. Mara was sleeping in short, shallow bursts. Every creak made someone flinch. We were running on nerves. The house felt satisfied. That's the only word I have for it. Satisfied, like it had proven something to itself. Morning came gray and thin. The sunlight barely pushed through the clouds, and the inside of the house stayed dim no matter how many lights we turned on. It wasn't oppressive like the previous nights. It was almost calm. But it was the calm of something watching you eat, studying routine, learning rhythm. I could feel its attention following me when I moved, not pressing, not hostile, just present, the way a person watches a chessboard. The girls tried to play. They stayed in the living room, spreading cards and crayons across the floor. Their voices were quieter than usual, but they were trying. That mattered. Mara was folding laundry beside them when Rowan suddenly stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes locked onto the hallway. Not fear, recognition. "Oh," she said softly, "you're back." The room froze. Mara looked at her. "Who?" Rowan pointed. Right at the hallway entrance. There was nothing there. I stood slowly. "Rowan," I said carefully, "who's back?" She frowned like the answer should have been obvious. "Lucas." My stomach dropped. I was standing behind her. She was pointing at the hallway. I stepped forward, placing myself between her and that empty doorway. "There's nobody there," I said. Rowan's expression shifted from confusion to uncertainty. She squinted, the way kids do when trying to make sense of something adults are denying. Then she shook her head. "Okay." But she didn't look convinced. And the air in the hallway thickened. Not cold, not heavy, just occupied. Like something had been standing there and didn't appreciate being dismissed. The first time I saw it clearly, I almost convinced myself I hadn't. Late afternoon. The girls were napping. Mara was in the kitchen. I was sitting in the armchair facing the hallway, not intentionally guarding it, just aware, listening. The house was quiet, too quiet. Then movement. A figure crossed the hallway, left to right, fast, human height, human shape. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stood immediately and stepped into the hall. Nothing. The air held that faint, sweet smell again, distant like memory. The hallway stretched empty. But the sensation of someone being nearby clung to my skin. Watching. I checked every room, closets, corners, nothing. When I returned to the living room, Mara was standing in the doorway. "You ran past me," she said. I stopped. "No, I didn't. I saw you go down the hallway." Cold slid into my chest. I was in the chair the whole time. Silence stretched between us. The house creaked softly, not random, measured, satisfied. That night, the imitation changed. It wasn't voices anymore. It was presence. We were all in the living room again. Lights on, no one pretending to sleep this time. The tension was too thick. The hallway sat in our peripheral vision like a wound we refused to touch. Then I saw myself, standing at the far end of the hall. Perfect posture, perfect silhouette, facing us. No facial detail, the distance swallowed it, but I knew the shape of my own shoulders, the tilt of my head. I didn't breathe. Mara's grip tightened on my arm. She saw it too. The girls followed our gaze. Rowan whispered, "Dad?" The figure didn't move, didn't blink, didn't sway. It was wrong in a way I can't fully explain. Too still, too intentional, like a mannequin pretending to be alive. I forced my voice steady. "That's not me." The figure twitched, just slightly, like a signal glitch. The air dropped 10 degrees. The sweet smell thickened. The girls pressed closer to Mara. The figure leaned forward, not stepping, just bending, as if examining us. And I felt something touch the inside of my thoughts. Not words, recognition, comparison, measurement. The house wasn't trying to trick us anymore. It was trying to understand what made a person, and it was practicing. The figure straightened, then walked, not toward us, across the hallway, each step smooth but slightly off, like the timing was wrong by a fraction of a second. It passed behind the wall. Gone. The air snapped back into place so hard my ears popped. 1 second the hallway felt stretched thin around that thing, and the next it was just wood, paint, and shadow again. Empty. Normal. Except nothing about the room felt normal anymore. No one spoke. Even the girls understood instinctively that whatever we'd just seen wasn't something you filled with noise. Mara's fingers were digging into my arm hard enough to hurt, but I didn't pull away. The pain grounded me. I kept staring at the hallway, waiting for it to come back. It didn't. The house creaked once, a low, settling sound, and the temperature slowly crawled back towards something human. The sweet smell thinned out until it was just another bad memory clinging to the inside of my nose. But the feeling of being studied didn't leave. It just stepped farther back, like whoever was holding the lens had zoomed out. Rowan was the first to speak. "That wasn't you," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "No," I said. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "It wasn't." She nodded like she'd expected that answer. Then she did something that scared me more than the figure had. She accepted it. Kids have a way of adjusting to impossible things faster than adults. Her shoulders relaxed just a little, like she'd filed the experience away under house things. That terrified me, because it meant the house was becoming normal, and normal is how you stop fighting. We didn't sleep after that. We didn't even try. The lights stayed on. The girls curled against Mara and drifted into shallow, restless naps. I sat facing the hallway, every muscle tuned for movement. Nothing came, no footsteps, no voices, no silhouettes, just the old wood settling and the distant hum of wind outside. But every few minutes, I felt it again. That attention, sliding across my thoughts, not invasive, not forcing, just present, like someone reading over your shoulder. And every time I noticed it, the house creaked softly. Acknowledgement. It knew I could feel it, and it liked that. Sometime deep into the night, Mara leaned close enough that her voice didn't carry. "It's learning," she whispered. I didn't look at her. "Yeah." Her fingers tightened around the girls. "It's not trying to scare us anymore." "No," I said. My eyes never left the hallway. "It's trying to get it right." The words tasted wrong, because they implied patience, practice, intent, and the house had all the time in the world. We didn't talk after that, we just listened. Hours passed in that suspended state where exhaustion and fear blur together. My vision kept trying to unfocus, shadows stretched, the hallway breathed in ways that were probably tricks of tired eyes. Probably. Then I blinked, and I was sitting in the hallway. My heart slammed so hard it hurt. For a split second, I didn't understand what was wrong. The perspective, the angle, the way the living room looked distant. Then it hit me. I wasn't in the chair anymore. I was standing halfway down the hallway, facing the living room. Mara and the girls were still there, sleeping. My pulse roared in my ears. I didn't remember standing, didn't remember walking. The air around me was thick and warm, like breath. The sweet smell wrapped tight around my head, and beneath it, something familiar. Comfort. Belonging. A quiet suggestion pressed gently into my thoughts. "You're where you should be." The hallway felt right. Like this was my place. Like the living room was the wrong side of a boundary I didn't remember crossing. My foot shifted forward toward the staircase. The wood didn't creak. The house was holding its breath. Breath. Encouraging. I saw it then. Not with my eyes, but in that space behind them where instinct lives. A version of me walking up those stairs, opening the door at the top, stepping inside, and never coming back down. The image felt peaceful, complete. My chest tightened. Something cold cut through the warmth. Memory. Mara laughing in the kitchen, Rowan tugging on my sleeve, the girls piled on the couch, the living room, my life. The hallway wasn't home. It was bait. I stepped backward. The warmth recoiled. The sweet smell soured instantly. Pressure slammed into my chest like a wave. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My ears rang. The hallway darkened. Not visually, but emotionally. The air filled with a sharp electric anger. Not rage, disappointment. Like I'd failed a test. The suggestion came again, harder this time. Stay. My foot hit the threshold of the living room. The pressure spiked. I forced the second step, then the third. Each one heavier than the last, like I was walking through wet cement. The instant both feet crossed back into the living room, the pressure vanished. Gone. The house exhaled sharply. Every board seemed to creak at once. Frustration rippled through the structure like a shiver. Mara jerked awake. Her eyes locked on me. Lucas? I realized I was shaking. I was in the hallway, I said, her face drained of color. You didn't move, she whispered. Cold settled in my stomach. I did. She shook her head slowly. You've been sitting there the whole time. We stared at each other. Neither of us spoke the obvious conclusion out loud because saying it would make it real. Something had walked into that hallway, and it thought it was me. The house quieted after that. Not resting, just thinking. I could feel it reorganizing itself around the failure, adjusting, because it had learned something important. It couldn't pull me away by imitation alone. It would have to change tactics again. And whatever came next was going to be more personal. I stayed awake until morning, watching the hallway, waiting for it to try again. It didn't. But I knew better than to believe that meant we'd won anything. The house was patient, and patience in a place like this was the most dangerous thing it had. Morning didn't feel like relief. It felt like intermission. The house had gone quiet in a way that wasn't natural sleep, more like something sitting still after failing, replaying the moment over and over until it understood what went wrong. The air was neutral, no sweetness, no cold, just waiting. Mara and I didn't talk about the hallway incident in front of the girls. We moved carefully around each other, communicating in glances and unfinished sentences. There's a kind of silent agreement that forms under pressure, an understanding that naming the fear gives it weight. The girls were subdued. They stayed close to Mara, orbiting her like small moons. Every now and then, one of them would glance toward the hallway, not with panic, but expectation, like they were waiting for someone to walk through. And eventually, something did. It happened mid-morning. I was rinsing dishes at the kitchen sink when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Soft, bare feet slapping wood. One of the girls, I assumed. Stay in the living room, I called out automatically. The footsteps stopped, then resumed. Closer. I turned off the faucet and stepped into the doorway. Rowan stood halfway down the hall. Her back was to me. She was perfectly still. Rowan? No response. Her shoulders didn't rise or fall. She wasn't breathing. A cold thread slid down my spine. I stepped forward slowly. Rowan, honey? She turned. Everything in me recoiled. It was Rowan's face, her hair, her pajamas. But the expression was wrong. Her smile stretched too wide, showing too many teeth. Her eyes didn't blink. They didn't focus. They sat in her skull like painted glass, and the way she held her head, too steady, like it had been mounted there. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Where's Rowan? I asked. The thing wearing her face tilted its head, slow, mechanical. Then it spoke. Not Rowan's voice, mine. She's safe. The words slid out wrong, like someone reading a script phonetically. My hands curled into fists. Move, I said. The smile widened. It took a step toward me. The motion was smooth, too smooth. No natural hesitation, no balance correction, just glide, plant, glide. Each step brought that faint, sweet smell back. The air thickened. The hallway felt smaller. You don't belong there, it said in my voice. Another step. You belong here. Behind me, I heard Mara. Lucas? Her voice trembled. The thing's eyes flicked toward her. The smile sharpened. And for a split second, Rowan's face flickered, like static, like a mask slipping. Underneath was something unfinished, a blur of shape and intention that hurt to look at. I moved without thinking. I stepped between it and the living room. No, I said. The word felt heavy, solid. The thing stopped. its head tilted again, studying me. Confusion radiated from it, not emotional, but structural, like it couldn't reconcile the resistance with whatever rule it thought existed. "You should be here," it repeated. The hallway darkened slightly. Pressure built behind my eyes. I forced another step forward. The smell turned sour. The smile faltered. Rowan's face twitched, stretching, compressing like clay being reshaped. Then it stepped backward, one glide, two. Retreating without breaking eye contact, the hallway brightened, the pressure eased, and with a final flicker, the thing collapsed inward. Not falling, not dissolving, just ceasing. The air snapped clean. The hallway was empty. Rowan's voice floated from the living room. "Dad?" Real. Breathing. Alive. I didn't answer right away. I stood there listening to my pulse hammer in my skull, waiting for the house to react. It didn't. No creak, no clap, no temperature shift. Just silence. The kind that follows a failed experiment. I walked back into the living room, slowly. Rowan was curled against Mara exactly where she should have been. Her eyes searched my face, reading something there I couldn't hide. "You look scared," she said. I crouched in front of her. "I'm okay," I told her. It wasn't a lie. Not entirely. I was scared, but I was also certain now. The house wasn't haunting us in the way stories describe. It wasn't replaying the past. It wasn't stuck. It was active, adaptive. It was trying to understand identity by wearing it. And when imitation failed, it tried embodiment, practice, trial and error, and I had just interrupted another lesson. The rest of the day passed under a strange truce. No voices, no figures, no pressure, but the house felt closer. Not physically, conceptually, not like it had stepped inside the boundary of what we considered safe and was now standing there, hands folded, observing. The girls played in tight circles. Mara didn't leave their side, and I watched the hallway because I knew the pattern now. Escalation, adjustment, escalation again. And whatever came next wouldn't be a borrowed voice or a borrowed face. It would be something the house believed, something it thought it had earned. That night, as the lights dimmed and the old boards whispered their slow language, I felt the attention settle on me again. Focused, patient, expectant. The house wasn't angry, it wasn't frustrated, it was excited, like it had finally understood the rules of the game, and it was ready to play properly. The morning after the stairwell incident felt compressed. That's the closest word I have for it. The rooms were the same size, the furniture hadn't moved, sunlight still fell through the windows at the same angles. But the air carried a pressure that made everything feel closer than it should have been. Voices didn't travel as far. Footsteps sounded muffled. Even breathing felt contained, like the house had drawn its walls inward just enough that space itself resisted expansion. Mara noticed it when she stood. She stretched instinctively, arms overhead, and stopped halfway. "There's less room," she said. Not frightened, confused. The girls looked up. Rowan shook her head. "It's the same." But she didn't sound convinced. I walked the perimeter of the living room slowly. Each step felt normal. The walls didn't physically move, yet my body kept expecting to bump into something. The house was playing with perception, testing how much it could bend without breaking the illusion, and it was doing it gently, on purpose. By afternoon, the distortion deepened. I went to the kitchen for water. It should have been 8 steps from the couch. I counted. 10. I stopped, looked back. The living room sat exactly where it should have been. Same distance, same angles. But my body knew. I walked back. 8 steps. The numbers refused to match. The hallway breathed softly around me, not moving, but aware of being observed. I tried again. 10 steps forward, 8 back. The distance wasn't consistent. It wasn't random either. It adjusted based on intention. The house wasn't changing shape. It was changing agreement. The silent contract that says space behaves predictably. And it was breaking that contract in small, controlled ways, seeing what we'd accept. The first real trap sprung just before evening. Rowan asked for the bathroom. Simple request. Mara nodded. "It's right there." The hallway stretched quiet and harmless. Rowan walked 1 step, 2, 3. And the hallway lengthened, not visibly, not like a cartoon corridor snapping outward. It just continued. Her footsteps echoed longer than they should have. I stood immediately. "Rowan, stop," she turned. Her face carried mild confusion. "I'm walking," she said, but she wasn't getting closer to the bathroom. The doorway remained the same distance away. Every step she took fed the hallway more length. The air cooled, that sweet smell crept in faintly. The house was watching, curious. Rowan's brow furrowed. I'm not moving, she said quietly. Panic flickered in her voice. I stepped into the hall. The pressure hit instantly. Walking felt like pushing through invisible resistance. Each step took effort. The hallway hummed softly. Approval or curiosity, I couldn't tell. I reached Rowan, grabbed her shoulders. Step back, I said. She did. The hallway snapped shorter. The bathroom door was suddenly right there. Normal distance, normal perspective. The air warmed. Rowan stared at the doorway like it had insulted her. I didn't like that, she whispered. Neither did I, because the house hadn't hidden anything. It had demonstrated control. Oh. We stayed in the living room after that. Nobody said it out loud, but we all understood the boundary had shifted. Movement meant negotiation now. Distance wasn't trustworthy, and the house liked that. You could feel its satisfaction in the way the boards creaked. Slow, thoughtful sounds, like fingers drumming against a desk. It was learning what frightened us and what didn't. That night, the walls came closer, not visibly, physically. I woke to the sensation of pressure against my shoulders. For one disorienting moment, I thought I'd rolled against the couch. Then I realized I was sitting upright, and the wall behind me was touching my back. I stood too fast. My head brushed the ceiling. The room had shrunk. The girls stirred, confused. Mara sat up sharply. Lucas? Her voice cut off. The ceiling pressed low. The walls crept inward with slow, deliberate certainty. No grinding, no cracking, just silent movement, like breath. The house was closing its fist. The air thickened. Breathing became work. Rowan whimpered. Dad. I pushed against the wall. It felt solid, unyielding, alive with tension. Stop, I said, not shouted, spoken. The word landed in the air like a stone dropped into water. The movement paused. The room held its breath. I felt the house focusing, studying the sound, the intention. Stop, I repeated. Calm, certain. The pressure eased, the walls slid back, the ceiling rose, space returned in slow increments until the living room was itself again. The girls clung to Mara. Nobody spoke. The house creaked softly, not angry, not defeated, thoughtful. It had learned something else. Resistance could change its behavior, which meant next time it wouldn't rely on walls. It would change something harder to push back against, something internal, perception, memory, direction. That realization settled cold in my chest, because you can brace against walls, you can't brace against your own senses. The house quieted for the rest of the night, but I could feel it reorganizing, adjusting the rules again, preparing the next lesson. And this one was going to happen inside us. I woke with the certainty that something had already happened. Not a dream. Not that fuzzy half memory you shake off with a blink. This was different. It sat in my chest like a fact without details, heavy, undeniable, and incomplete. Something had occurred in the night, something important, and I couldn't remember it. The realization didn't arrive with panic. It arrived with irritation, like trying to recall a name on the tip of your tongue. I sat up slowly. The living room looked normal. Mara slept curled toward the girls. Rowan had her arm flung across her face. June's breathing came soft and steady, peaceful, too peaceful. My eyes drifted to the hallway. The coat closet door was closed. The house felt satisfied. That was the word. Satisfied in the way a locked box is satisfied, holding something inside and knowing it will stay there. My pulse ticked up. I stood quietly and tested my thoughts. Yesterday, hallway stretching, walls closing. We stopped it. I remembered that clearly. But between then and now, nothing. A blank space where time should have been, not fog, absence, like a paragraph torn out of a book. I checked my phone. The clock read 6:12 a.m., battery at 34%. That felt wrong. I charged it before sleeping. Didn't I? I scrolled my messages. No new notifications. Then I opened the camera roll. My stomach tightened. There were photos I didn't remember taking. The first image showed the hallway. Dark, lit only by my phone's flash. The timestamp read 2:03 a.m. The angle was low, my hand shaking slightly. The hallway looked longer than it should have been. Not distorted, just extended. The second photo was closer. The coat closet door stood open. Blackness inside. The stairwell. My throat dried. I didn't remember taking this, didn't remember walking there, didn't remember being awake. The third photo made my skin crawl. The stairwell again, but this time I was halfway down. I knew because my foot was visible in the frame, bare, balanced on a wooden step, and at the bottom, something stood. Not a shape, not a person. Just a darker vertical interruption in the dark, a place where the flash should have reflected and didn't. The timestamp read 2:04 a.m. There were no photos after that. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. My chest tightened with delayed fear. I had gone down there. The house had taken me into the room that wasn't there. And then, nothing. The memory simply didn't exist. Mara woke to me staring at the phone. "What's wrong?" she murmured. I showed her. Her face drained of color. "You went down there?" she whispered. "I don't remember it." Her eyes flicked to the hallway. "You were gone," she said quietly. My breath caught. "What?" "I woke up," she said. "You weren't here." My heart thudded. "I checked the bathroom, kitchen. You were just gone." She swallowed. "And then you were back, sitting exactly where you are now." I felt the room tilt. "What time?" "I don't know. A few minutes? Maybe longer." "Why didn't you wake me?" "I did," she said. The certainty in her voice chilled me. "You opened your eyes," she continued. "You looked at me and said, 'It's fine.' I didn't remember saying that, didn't remember opening my eyes, didn't remember returning." The house creaked softly, listening, holding the missing piece between its walls like a secret. The girls woke uneasy. Rowan kept glancing at me like she was trying to confirm I was solid. June asked a strange question over breakfast. "Dad," she said carefully, "why were you crying last night?" The fork froze in my hand. "I wasn't crying," I said. She frowned. "You were. I heard you." Rowan nodded slowly. "Like quiet crying," she added. Mara looked at me. I shook my head. "I don't remember that." The air thickened. The house didn't creak this time. It waited, letting the silence stretch. June pushed her cereal around. "You were saying sorry," she whispered. A cold ripple ran down my spine. "For what?" Mara asked gently. June shrugged. "You didn't say." The girls weren't frightened. They were confused, which meant whatever happened didn't scare them. It scared me. And the house had taken that memory away. Selective, intentional. It wasn't just erasing time. It was curating experience, letting others remember what I couldn't. That meant control. And something else. The house wanted me uncertain. I tested the gaps throughout the day. Small things slipped. I'd enter a room and forget why. I'd reach for an object already in my hand. Moments folded in on themselves. Not dramatic, subtle, but persistent. And every time it happened, the house hummed quietly, a soft vibration in the walls like approval. It wasn't stealing memories, it was loosening my grip on them, teaching my mind to accept missing pieces. Conditioning. That realization landed heavy, because once you stop trusting your memory, you stop trusting yourself. And the house knew that. That night, I made a decision. I set my phone to record video, placed it facing the hallway, timestamp visible, battery plugged in. If I walked in my sleep again, I'd have proof. I lay down. The air smelled faintly sweet. The house was aware. I could feel its attention resting on the phone like a fingertip. Curious. I closed my eyes. Sleep took me quickly, too quickly, and I dreamed of stairs. I woke Tamara shaking my shoulder. "Lucas," her voice trembled, "you need to see this." The room was gray with early light. The phone sat where I left it, recording complete. 4 hours of footage. My hands shook as I opened the video. We fast-forwarded. Nothing. Stillness. Breathing. Sleep. Then, 2, 3 a.m., I sat up. Eyes open. Too open. Unblinking. I turned toward the hallway and smiled. Not my smile. Something practiced. Polite. Empty. I stood, walked to the closet, opened the door. The stairwell was visible even on camera, a black vertical wound in the house. I descended. The frame held on the empty hallway. 30 seconds passed. 1 minute. 2. The air on the video shimmered slightly, like heat distortion. Then I returned. Climbed into frame, but I wasn't alone. Something moved behind me, not stepping, sliding. A deeper darkness layered against my back. I sat down, lay flat, closed my eyes. The darkness peeled away from me and sank into the hallway. The closet door shut on its own. The timestamp ticked forward. I didn't move again. The video ended. Silence filled the room. Mara's grip tightened painfully on my arm. "That was inside you," she whispered. I couldn't breathe, because I knew with cold certainty that whatever came back up those stairs was wearing my body, and I had no memory of lending it. The house creaked softly, satisfied. Not hiding anymore. It had crossed a boundary, and it wanted me to know. Memory wasn't safe. Sleep wasn't safe. And the thing in the room that wasn't there was learning how to walk upstairs. I didn't sleep after the video. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smile, the one wearing my face like it had practiced in a mirror. Mara sat beside me on the floor, knees tucked to her chest, watching the hallway like it might start walking toward us. The girls were still asleep, and I envied them in a way that felt almost cruel. They didn't know yet. Not really. Kids sense danger like animals, but they don't catalog it. They don't replay footage frame by frame in their heads, asking the same question over and over. If that wasn't me, then then where was I? The house creaked, soft, content, like it had exhaled after finishing something difficult. I stood. Mara grabbed my wrist instantly. Where are you going? Her grip trembled. Bathroom, I said. My voice sounded normal, too normal. She studied my face for a long second before letting go. I walked down the hallway slowly, every nerve tuned to the walls. The floorboards didn't groan like they usually did. The house was quiet in a way that felt intentional, like a crowd going silent before a speech. The bathroom mirror waited. I didn't want to look, which meant I had to. I raised my eyes. For a split second, my reflection lagged, just a fraction, but enough. Enough to send ice through my veins. I moved my head. It followed late. Then it caught up and smiled. Not a glitch, not imagination, a small, polite smile, exactly like the one from the video. I staggered back. The reflection stayed where it was, watching, interested. Then it stepped forward inside the glass. Not breaking it, not crossing it, just closer. I could see details that weren't mine. Eyes a shade darker, skin too smooth, like someone had redrawn me from memory and missed the imperfections. You're tired, it said. The voice came from the mirror, but it sounded like it came from inside my head. I didn't answer, didn't trust my mouth. You don't have to keep doing this, it continued gently. You've already done enough. Something about that phrasing slid under my skin. Done enough. Like a tired parent handing over a shift. I can take care of them, it said. The girls flashed in my mind. Rowan laughing. June curled under blankets, Mara half asleep beside me. No, I whispered. The reflection tilted its head. Why not? Because you're not me. The thought felt weak, incomplete, because part of me, a small, exhausted corner, wondered what it would feel like to stop, to let someone else carry the fear. The reflection saw it, smiled wider. You're so tired, Lucas. My knees buckled slightly. It wasn't wrong. The house pressed in around me, warm, encouraging. Rest. That word didn't come from the mirror. It came from the walls, the floor, the air. Rest. Just a moment. Let go. I blinked, and suddenly I was sitting on the bathroom floor, hands in my lap, mirror normal, breathing steady. I didn't remember sitting down, didn't remember blinking. Panic surged. I stood too fast and nearly fell. Memory gap. Awake. Not asleep. It was happening while I was conscious. That meant the barrier was gone. The thing inside the room that wasn't there wasn't waiting for sleep anymore. It was practicing. When I returned to the living room, Mara saw my face and knew. You lost time, she said. Not a question. I nodded. Her lips thinned. We're leaving, she said. The certainty in her voice cut through the fog in my head. Yes, I said immediately. No hesitation, no debate. The house reacted, not loudly, not violently, just pressure. Like the air thickened. The girls stirred. Rowan sat up. Dad? Her voice trembled. The hallway's wrong. I turned. The hallway wasn't stretching this time. It was narrowing, walls inching closer. Slow. Deliberate. The house wasn't hiding anymore. It was closing its hand. Shoes, Mara said sharply. Now. The girls moved. Fear makes kids efficient. I grabbed the keys from the counter. They felt warm. Too warm, like they'd been held. The hallway shrank another inch. The coat closet door creaked open. The stairwell waited. Black. Hungry. I felt it tug at me. Not physical. Something deeper. Recognition. Come back. The voice wasn't sound. It was gravity. The pull of familiarity, of belonging. A terrible thought surfaced. You were safer down there. My breath hitched. That wasn't my thought, but it felt like one. The house pressed again. Rest. Just step down. You're already tired. I took a step forward, not toward the door, toward the closet. Mara's hand snapped around mine. Lucas. Her voice cracked like a whip. I blinked. The pull snapped. I was halfway to the stairwell. My heart hammered. No, I gasped. Not to her. To the house. The hallway tightened. The walls groaned. The house didn't like refusal. Good, I didn't like it either. Now, Mara shouted. We ran. The hallway fought us. Every step felt heavy, like running underwater. The girls cried out as the air thickened. The stairwell whispered my name, not in a voice, in memory. I saw flashes, standing at the bottom of the stairs, talking to someone I couldn't see, agreeing, smiling. The memory tried to root, to become real. I tore my gaze away. The front door loomed. 5 steps. 4. 3. The house roared, not sound, pressure. The walls bulged inward. The stairwell screamed silently, "Stay." The word hit like a punch. I grabbed the door. It resisted for half a second. Then it opened. Sunlight flooded in. The pressure snapped. We stumbled onto the porch in a heap of limbs and breath and shaking hands. The air outside felt thin, clean, real. The house sat behind us, quiet, watching. The coat closet door swung shut on its own, a soft click, not angry, not defeated, patient, like it knew something we didn't. I looked at my hands. They were steady. My thoughts were clear. For the first time in days, my mind felt like mine. And yet, a small absence lingered, a gap shaped like a conversation I didn't remember finishing, a promise I might have made. The house didn't feel far away. It felt connected, like a thread still tied somewhere deep inside me. I knew then we had left. But something had stayed, and it wasn't in the house. It was in me, waiting, learning, patient. The kind of patience that doesn't fade, the kind that knows it will be invited back, eventually. I didn't look at the house again, because I was afraid if I did, I'd recognize it, and it would recognize me.